Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz vocalist Kate McGarry. She just released a 2017 CD, The Subject Tonight is Love, and she has plenty to say about it. She grew up in Massachusetts, one of 10 children in a musical family that spent many nights singing together. At the University of Massachusetts Amherst, she earned a degree in Afro-American Music and Jazz experiences, studying meditation and many other things from around the world. After years honing her craft in Los Angeles, she moved to New York, and that has led her to the stages of Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, Birdland, and to the Newport Jazz Festival, Berlin's Jazz Festival, and so many other venues. Please get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
Kate, thank you for taking a minute out for me today. I appreciate it.
Nice to be with you, Joe.
So let's go ahead and start off here. Your latest CD, The Subject Tonight is Love. Talk to me about this album. What kind of creative forces went into this album for you?
Well, this is a new concept for me, either large group albums or I did them with my husband. But then I felt like I wanted to do a trio concept where each member of the group had an equal say, and just a singer with a band behind her. We really conceived of this as three equal voices, and we got together and put music in with that way, so that I was telling stories that Keith and Gary were making a crack that goes with that, sounds that went with the stories that I was telling. And we were using mostly the Great American Songbook and my own original material to do it with.
How do you feel about the album? Are you happy with how it turned out?
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. I think it's, it can, to me, looking at love as the substratum for all experiences, and there's so many different viewpoints and perspectives. It's like you can, there's so many ways to approach the subject, and songs deal with it in different ways. So that's what I was hoping to do. It wasn't just like a version of love, but going deeper than that.
Beautiful. So let's go back to your childhood. You grew up in
Hyannis.
Yeah, all right.
Hyannis.
I didn't want to do I didn't want to make the common mistake. So
sure.
So you grow up in Massachusetts. You're one of 10 children. That's a lot of action. Man alive.
Yeah, it was a chaotic, but music was one of the things that brought us together and kept us sane as a family, kept us close. My parents sang all the time, and they grew up singing. They both had beautiful voices, and they were never perfect. They were just people who loved and felt that song was a gift. They were very kind of unself-conscious in the way that they sang. So, singing was just a part of every day in my family, and so I felt invited to it in that way.
You go from there to the University of Massachusetts. You get a degree in Afro-American Music and Jazz, and then you kind of get on your way and start. What did you learn in college? What did college lend to you that helped you as a professional musician? That's
a great question, Joe. This particular program, the African Jazz program, was connected to the Afro-American Studies, something that was, to me, a great opportunity, because I was able to learn from people like James Baldwin, writers who changed the world, and organizers and people who were really part of that happened in the 60s. And I felt that the music department came out of that as well, like they Roach and people of that nature, Dr. Billy Taylor started that department. Archie Shepp, who's a wonderful, and like John Coltrane, but in the fiery even way than John Coltrane. So I was learning from really amazing teachers there, and it was a way of, with not just jazz as a music that but it was connecting with the roots of jazz and how it came from Africa, and that it developed as a music of to express freedom and search for freedom. And so that, to me, was something that degree offered that I love to continue when want to make sure that students get that connection to the roots of the music.
You know, the one thing about your life, too, is you've studied a lot of different things along the lines of meditation, different music like Brazilian and Indian music and different cultures. How has that lent to you and your voice, the voice that you try to cultivate and make your own?
What I notice is that my voice is just, it's not a huge voice, it's not a big belting voice, but it's power, and that it's all the things that are in me are in there, you know, and that's how, I guess that's how any voice is it's a conglomeration of who you are as a person and what you love. And so hopefully the things that I've studied, and, you know, going to live in an ashram, studying Indian music and studying Brazilian music and all those different things, background of Celtic music, those are all affecting, I think, just folk music in general. It brings you back to your essence. And so any folk music is developed from just the, you know, the most basic elements of culture. And so all of those times that I've looked into those music, it's helped me, I think, get more grounded in the fact that that's what I value in music.
So the one thing you did is you honed your craft in LA, and then you moved to New York. What kind of culture shock was that? What was the contrasting, similar things that were going on in those scenes?
I lived in LA for about 8 years, and that was a really beautiful, exciting place for me to grow up that was not quite as intense as New York City. And I had the ocean that I could go to, and there was a lot of nature there. And there was a beautiful jazz musicians there. And so I was able to kind of hone my craft there, try out a lot of different things, and having a band is a great way to grow as a musician. So I had a band that I did, and we made an album together in 1992, and that was my very first foray into recording. I actually moved from LA that's when I decided to go study in and that was in the Catskills in New York. And I did that for about 2.5, almost 3 years. Then it was after that I moved to New York City and decided to pursuing jazz singing as a profession. I felt like I was just joining back up with a larger community. The community was certainly busier and there was more music happening, but it's not that much different in a way. It's sort of I feel like it's one big wide community where everybody understands what you're going for. You know, all as jazz musicians, we want to share our music. We want to grow and develop as musicians, have more freedom in our improvisation, and write music present in both communities on the West Coast and on the East Coast. There were just a lot more opportunities to play and to be affected by other musicians, a lot more influences there.
So you played all over the place, played on a lot of stages, from Carnegie Hall to Birdland, Newport Jazz Fest. The first time that you ever played these stages, were you just kind of be speckled by the history of it?
I felt like stepping out onto the stage at Carnegie Hall was a huge thing for me. I was used to playing in a lot smaller stages, and then as I brought into different arenas, I had to expand and grow and get more stable in myself so that I could kind of hang in those situations and project further. It kind of brought me to a little bit a better self in terms of feeling like opening up and being able to and feel like I could send my energy out bigger. Do you know what I mean?
You've had critically acclaimed CDs. You were up for a Grammy nomination. You've been all over the place. How do you feel about your career? Are you happy with what's happened up to this point? My idea about a career has changed a lot, and since I was first graduated from college and I went to Los Angeles, I am invited to be in the Monterey Jazz Festival, and I remember at that time I had this feeling like, great, and I was so, excited about that, and I had all these concepts about and the kind of life that I was projecting of what I wanted to live, and that's not how my life unfolded. It was slower and much there were lots of twists and turns. My idea of success is a lot different now. I don't, that you have to be
playing in the biggest rooms, and you have to be on time, and you have to be, it's more, because everybody has different energy levels. I'm finding, you know, as I've lived, that I'm perverted side of myself that needs to regenerate a lot after I do perform. I don't have that need or that draw to be on the road. And that may change as I get older, I'm not sure, but having opportunities, you know, to share music with people and be able to make records and tour when I'd like to, but not feel like I'm owned by.
Yeah, without a doubt. So why do you love jazz?
You know, when I was a teenager, I remember I was listening to Keith Jarrett. So somebody gave me this record of his, came out called My Song. 78. When I put that music on, I began to weep. And I listened to that record over and over and over and over. Was that it felt like it was a huge container that could, any emotion, any shade, any nuance, and I felt that there was, that it wouldn't have to, you know, it could be different the next day. It could be bigger or smaller, and that the container of jazz was big enough and varied enough that it was like a safe place for everything, all that were inside me, that I didn't have any other way to express. And the other thing was that I just a great connection to the swing rhythm and that kind of Irish connection, because Irish music has a real memento kind of swing of its own, and I found like a link to jazz in that I've always just felt really compelled by.
So let me ask you this. What's one of the most profound live jazz shows you've ever seen that really moved you?
I saw Betty Carter at a club in Boston, and that blew my mind. I've seen so many different ones, but that was probably in the 80s. I saw her, and I've seen Carmen McRae and shows. I mean, whenever I see a really great jazz singer, whenever I've seen one, it's the greatest show, you know, in some way, because it just was like people that I've listened to and are right in front of me, making the music right in front of me. So I've had some beautiful experiences with that. Powerful shows that I've seen would be Bobby McFerrin, some large shows where it was just like watching, you know, the sun just like go around and light up people, you know. It was amazing. Pat Metheny shows that I've in my life have been like that for me. Just things that break them, you know, and make your energy flow. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, your fans. But when you face the world each day, who do you think you are?
I think I spend a lot of time stripping away those ideas. I guess the notice is that when I feel emotional pain or spiritual pain, it's usually identities that are not true, you know, that I'm taking, like you're this or you're to this or you're to that, you know, anything from, they could be criticisms or they could be egotistical things like, well, the idea that I'm supposed to be a jazz singer who's holding up the tradition, that can cause a lot of pain. Is that really true? I'm just walking around. So the more identities that I have, the more pain. I feel like my journey in life is shedding those moment by moment and trying to really just live in whatever the moment is and without identities and notice they're causing me pain and try and let go of them.
That's a great answer. Very profound and deep, yeah. And I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Kate, thank you for talking about your newest album, your life in music, and so much more. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Massachusetts, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Kate for her music, her time, and her honesty. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And as always, for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Love's all you need.
Neon Jazz.